Hello and welcome back to the Card Pool. I'm your host, Stu.
And I'm Kyle, once again coming to you through the miracle of video conferencing technology here in quarantine.
AKA, we're remoting and not like that controller thing. And we're coming at you with one of our Hidden Gem series, and we're looking at the set this time of Exodus. So we're pretty excited for this one, and this is going to be our part one of the series. This is going to be cards 10 through 6. Then we're going to have our follow-up one, which is going to be the creme de la creme that we found. So with no time to waste, let's start it off.
All right, go ahead, Stu. I think you're first here.
So my number 10 is a card called Onslaught. Yes, that is a Magic set. That's not what we're talking about right now. But Onslaught right here is a red enchantment. I can't read. It costs 1 red mana, and it reads, whenever you successfully cast a creature spell, tap target creature. So the reason this card stuck out to me is this is really off the grid for what red has access to. Usually you see these tapping effects in blue or in white. So being able to give this to red is really powerful. And at such a low cost, this is really pretty much viable in red, because red's all about aggro, swarming out, and attacking. So tapping out a creature is good.
Yeah, well, we've seen cards in red like Ashling's Prerogative, for example, where certain creatures come into play tapped. Eurobrask the Hidden, where other people's creatures come into play tapped. This is even more interesting because I don't know that I've seen a card that, like taps creatures except in maybe white or blue, definitely not in red. But this is actually, surprisingly, even for just number 10 on the list here, we're just starting out, this is a really good card. Most red decks are creature-based and aggressive with low drop, quick attacking, hasty creatures. A card like this can keep your opponents off balance and keep them from blocking almost indefinitely if you can supply a steady swarm of low drop creatures. I know Commander's not necessarily about doing that most of the time because people want to play big, but still, this is a very interesting tool in Red's arsenal and one that I did not know existed, but I would like to take advantage of at some point. It's pretty good. I like it a lot.
Thanks. It would just be so good if this had ETB trigger on it. Like whenever a creature entered the battlefield, it would just be bonkers. Because like a Franco deck, it's like the dream for red to have that. Like Franco being able to create like 10 creatures and then tap down pretty much every player's board state would be huge. So the cast trigger is more or less the thing. But also, if your commander has haste, you go ahead, you cast your commander, taps down a blocker, you swing in for damage. Like I forget the name of the guy who has the Cascade trigger. When you go ahead and you attack, you can now have Cascade on every permanent or every spell you cast. Being able to use something like that to combo with it would be very powerful. But it's something Maelstrom. I forget his name. One of the 4-colored guys.
Oh, Yidris or
Yidris. Yeah. Yeah, it would be perfect in something like that, where you go ahead, you just cast like a creature out. All right, this taps it down, and then with the Cascade trigger, that's also another cast. You tap down another creature. It'd be so great. However, that's a little post combat. But again, leaving a player vulnerable for another player to go ahead and attack into. Again, it's a political card in that realm, and for 1 mana, I think it's huge.
Definitely is. Yeah, great choice, Stu.
Thanks, Kyle. So what do you got for your number 10? Did I upstage it?
Right, well, it's not as flashy, but it's pretty solid card here. Number 10 for me is called Slaughter. This is a black instant that costs 4 to play, 2 generic and double black. Destroy target non-black creature. That creature can't be regenerated this turn. And it has the buyback ability where you can pay a buyback cost in addition to the other costs of playing the spell to have it returned to your hand instead of going to the graveyard. So this one is paying 4 life. So you pay 4 mana, play this, kill a creature, pay 4 life, and it goes back to your hand instead of going away. One-shot removal like this isn't normally my speed, especially with certain conditions like a non-black creature, and it has to be a creature. So things like, Utter End and Anguished Unmaking usually take the cake on this particular front. However, this is pretty interesting to consider for decks that want a consistent source of removal, because that buyback cost is not a mana cost like a lot of the time it ends up being. It's just a life cost. And especially in a game of Commander where you're at 40 life, paying 4 life a couple of times to rebuy a source of removal like this is not at all a bad deal.
No, I agree with you with that. It's one of the easiest buyback costs that we've seen. Some of them are like discarding cards in order to keep it, and that like can work for so long inherently, but it feels bad at a certain point. This is a great card for that. I will admit the 4 mana is a bit high, but the recurability on this is really the part that makes it shine. Black has no problem being able to spot removal any problem creatures. It's great being able to kill a commander. It's a very black card down to its core, and it's a decent card. I mean, there's not much else to say beyond that, except there are other forms of spot removal. Just choose which one you want.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's not very flashy, but I like the fact that the buyback cost is so easy to do on this one.
Yeah, it just comes into comparison. Like, how does this match up with two of Vraska's Contempt? Like, this card was printed forever ago, and Vraska's Contempt being much more recent. And actually, Wizards has started going ahead creating more 4-drop black instants to spot removal creatures. So this one actually could be a contender and a great budget option to some cards like that.
Oh, I definitely think so. But this one's kind of boring. So let's move on to whatever your next card is, Stu.
All right, this next one I'm only going to butcher up. At number 9, I have Transmogriff Licit. Gosh, Kyle.
Transmogrifying.
Yeah, that's a word.
There we go.
This is a 3-drop artifact creature, 3 generic mana for a 2/2 body. Now it says it counts as a Licit, which doesn't really matter in this case. Not many creatures out there are Licids. However, the ability this creature has is pretty astonishing. So for 1 mana, you can go ahead and tap this. And now this creature no longer becomes a creature. It's now a creature enchantment that reads, you would go ahead and you enchant a creature. It gets +1/1, and it counts as an artifact instead of its other types. Now, that was Oracle, so it's in addition. So if it's a creature, it's also a creature artifact now. Then you move this creature onto it. However, you can stop this effect at any point just by going ahead and paying 1 generic mana. So that's a lot to take in right off the bat there. And also, I didn't enunciate it all the best way. So if you're still with me with this card, pretty much you can go ahead, use this creature, you can tap it and make it so a creature gets a boost and becomes an artifact into its other stuff. And at any point, at instant speed, you can go ahead and make it so that this goes away from being an aura and back to a creature. This is a very hard card to hit. It's kind of like how you see with Sensei's Divining Top. Someone goes ahead and they target it. Well, in response, they can go ahead and protect it as long as they have a little bit of mana. But the thing that makes this really stick out and shine is artifact removal is super easy to do to a creature or any permanent, actually. So being able to make it so that some creature is now an artifact in addition to its other types now makes it vulnerable where it didn't have that problem before. So this is more or less, it could be a creature, but it's also a way to make it so you can enable a combo to remove a problem piece.
Yeah, this is an interesting card. The Licids overall are kind of interesting. I mean, they were basically auras / equipments before equipments existed. Obviously, auras existed, but this one being an artifact is a lot more like an equipment. And the fact that it does change the equipped, I guess, creature into an artifact is what the big selling point is here, because enabling something to be an artifact gives you access to all kinds of weird shenanigans that you might not have had access to before. And like you said, Stu, it is very easy to save this at instant speed at any time just by paying 1 mana and either turning it back into a creature or equip it to a creature. So if somebody tries to remove the creature that you just enchanted or equipped or whatever we're calling it with this card, you can then say, oh, hey, I'm just going to tap 1 mana. This is going to go back to being a creature by itself, and your removal is now invalid. So that's very interesting.
And inherently, if you have a way to give haste, you can keep going ahead and bouncing this back and forth, and making it so it can't die. So in red, this is super powerful. But also, you can put this in any deck. This is generic color right here. So this can give a form of spot removal to blue, to black. Like, liquid metal coating is usually one of the cards. If you have a way to get rid of a lot of artifacts, you'll throw that in as being a pseudo way to get rid of enchantments or planeswalkers or lands even. So being able to have that on a creature, which can be recurable, it's a small body, it can be returned with Sun Titan. It's like there's so many things that you can do with it, and you can tutor it in so many ways. It just seems like the potential with this is like unfathomable almost.
Yeah, and I just can't think of anywhere exactly that would want this right now, but that doesn't mean there isn't a good place for it. So very, very interesting kind of option to have here. These listids are pretty strange, but potentially useful. There are other ones coming up that we'll talk about too. I don't want to ruin that.
So number 9, what do you got for us, Kyle?
All right, well, my number 9 on this list is Shackles. This is a white enchantment that costs 3, 2 generic, and 1 white to play. And it's an aura, to be specific. Enchant a creature. The enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. And it has the additional ability to pay 1 white and return Shackles to its owner's hand. Now, normally, I wouldn't really care that much about a card like this because not only does it as an aura, makes itself, very vulnerable to being removed, and it's only enchants other people's creatures, doesn't really enhance your own. This one isn't even as good as a pacifism where it stops a creature from attacking or blocking or both. It just kind of stops it from untapping, so it has to be tapped first. All of that aside, the reason I wanted to name this card is because it's part of a very rare kind of enchantment that bounces itself. And as we see more and more over the years, cards with cast an enchantment triggers or constellation when enchantments enter the battlefield, enchantments that can bounce themselves and be recast over and over again keep getting better and better. So that is why I care about this card.
I agree. Yeah, I was going to bring up the Constellation trigger. And, well, not even just for that. It's also great for Enchantress decks, like you were saying, where it's like whenever you cast an enchantment, you draw a card. So this is a great way to enable something for, like, a Saram deck. Yeah, you might not be casting this on yourself, and it might not be staying on the field for too long. But you'll get value from it. And also, it's going to be darn hard to kill, like we said before with the other card, with the Licit. All right, I'm going to go ahead and spot removal this. All right, well, I'm going to return it to my hand. Well, I'll spot removal it again. Okay, I'll still return it to my hand and I'll pay the cost. It's such a low cost that it's just so easy to go ahead and get the value from with this that inherently you shouldn't get rid of this. Should never hit the grave. It really should not. You should have this the entire game.
Yeah. Now, is it as good as something that can be used more offensively, like a Flickering Ward, for example? Definitely not. But this does make a great addition to the potential Constellation arsenal, I think. I certainly didn't know this card existed before now, so always learning more. Glad I know now.
Yeah, and you know a lot more cards than me. Every card that we're pretty much talking about, I always never have any clue about. So moving on to number 8. Now, this is another head scratcher here. My card is called Spike Cannibal. It costs 3 mana, 1 generic, and double black for a summon Spike. We can look into the Oracle for what that actually means later. But it has a 0/0 body, and it reads, this creature comes into play with a 1/1 counter on it. And when it comes into play, remove all 1/1 counters from all creatures onto this creature. So this is very interesting because usually in decks, you want to make it so that you're putting out +1 counters out continuously, right? And usually those kind of creatures have small bodies or a 0/0 body. So this is kind of off the mold for what we do with counters. In fact, it's so off the mold, I would argue the point that this is actually the mass removal for counter-based strategies. You play this, you should inherently be able to kill one player's entire +1/+1 counter system that they have fully been trying to grow. And like we've been seeing with like Ikora or Ikora, that's actually something that they're touching on again, being able to move counters around, being able to strip them all away from an entire player that they've been growing for their entire turn, their turns on turns, is going to be great being able to get rid of that for just 3 mana.
Well, there are more recent cards that kind of, I think, do this one better, like Thief of Blood, Vampire Hexmage are 2 examples that actually remove counters from all permanents, not just +1/+1 counters. So they can kill Planeswalkers, they can kill off quest enchantments like a Beastmaster Ascension and reset it to 0, those kind of things. However, I think this was kind of maybe where that sort of ability began, perhaps. And it's an interesting card for sure. I think it's more like a sideboard card than a lot of the other ones we like to discuss are, but it is certainly a potent one, especially only for 3 mana. That's pretty good. And just for clarification, this is still a spike. Spike is a creature type. So,
oh, it is?
Oh, it is. They're weird little slug-like creatures, apparently. So yeah, that's what they are.
I thought it was a type of player.
Well, that too.
But also, I was like thinking it's really good for hosing down certain decks that grow, like an Omnath deck or like an Atraxa deck, which is all about putting +1 counters on and stuff like that. Being able to strip them away and potentially kill stuff for just 3 mana is nice. Yeah, and it's a total sideboard kind of card. Unless you are trying to go for a Hail Mary play, like you could put this in an Atraxa deck, have something like being able to give it trample or infect and swing in and kill a player. You could make this as like your ace in the hole. But beyond that, not too much more to talk about this card.
All right, well, moving on to my number 8 here, we're going to go to a green card called Resuscitate. This is an instant, and it costs 2 to play, 1 generic and 1 green. Until end of turn, each creature you control gains the ability to tap for 1 of any mana, regenerate this creature. So we see cards today that are honestly probably better than this. Like Heroic Intervention is like the staple of green decks everywhere. That just blanket gives things indestructible and shuts down board wipes, shuts down removal, shuts down everything. This is the old school version of that, and obviously it's not quite as good as being able to shut all that down for just 2 mana. However, this gives all of your creatures now the ability to, just for 1 mana, doesn't matter what color it is, just for 1 mana, save itself from being destroyed or board wiped. That alone is pretty valuable. So it costs mana, sure, but especially if you're in green, which is historically very weak to board wipes, saving creatures for just 1 mana a pop is going to be a very good deal for you.
It's a mana sink for sure. Like if it was like being able to regenerate all creatures instantly that turn just for 2 mana, that'd be obviously a money card for this set. But it is a great effect to have. Like you can choose exactly how much mana you need to have for this. But this is great for a couple reasons. Regenerate's really strong in the form of compared to indestructible. I mean, it's hard to kind of hit in a sort of sense. Like there are some board wipes out there that say destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated, and in those situations this card's going to feel bad. But being able to go ahead and attack and get attack triggers that you need to get while keeping your creature alive feels great. And green has regenerate as pretty much its strongest effect that it in its arsenal, but they stopped printing it over time. So more cards that have regenerate on them have only kind of been stronger as the game's progressed. Like Yavimaya Hollow, that's a land that's gone up in value just for being able to give regenerate out like that, and it's super powerful.
Yeah, well, and they also stopped because regeneration isn't a factor in the game anymore. They stopped printing removal that says can't be regenerated. So yeah, exactly. every removal piece now, basically that doesn't exile, is weaker against regenerate creatures.
Agreed. And we also do see this. There is the 1 green enchantment, which makes it so you can go ahead and give regenerate to creatures for 2 mana. However,
yes.
Yeah, staticism, which you could argue might be better in this case. However, you can go ahead and put this on like an Isochron Scepter or something like that. So you could get recurability out of this. And also, it's asking for generic mana, which you should be able to produce even easier. If you go in infinite with like a Basalt Monolith or something like that, that's pretty easy to come by. It's definitely an interesting card to know about. I'm not sure if it fits all builds, but it's definitely a good like safety card. And in green, those are pretty rare.
Agreed. Well, let's move on to another one, Stu. What do you got?
All right, for my number 7, I picked the cards I can't read. So it's Paroxysm.
Paroxysm? Yeah,
I was closer. All right, that's half a point. It costs 2 mana for an enchantment R, and this is in red. It costs 1 generic and a red. During the upkeep of enchanted creature controls, I'm going to restart that one over. During the upkeep of enchanted creature's controller, reveal the top card of that player's library to all players. If that card is a land, destroy enchanted creature. Otherwise, the creature gets +3/3 until the end of the turn. So this is an aura that gives you good political plays. It makes it so that people now understand exactly what one player has. And if it's a potential threat, we all take note. If it kills the creature, it's a 2 mana destroy, remove permanent spell, which is great. You don't really see that in red like this. It just seems very unusual for red to have access to this. However, it is a little timey-wimey, but again, red doesn't have access to this kind of stuff like we see in black. So this is still something that's decent for it.
I mean, interesting is one word for it, not maybe the one I would use.
All right.
I get this is a way to kill a problem creature, but like a lot of other things, it relies on chance and could potentially backfire on you. I'm not a huge fan of this one, if I'm being honest. Like, I get it. I mean, the fact that it's an aura too gives it a little bit more ability to combine maybe than other permanents or cards, but yeah, I don't know about this one. I'm not sold on it, if I'm being honest.
All right. Well, all right. It's a 2-drop removal spell for red, and that's mainly the reason I like this card. It has great, like, the boost is not really what you're using it for. You can use this on your own creature if you really want to. You're using a low land count, or if you can manipulate how your deck goes. A lot of tutors go to the top of the deck. So this is a card it could whiff. It could work. It depends on what you're trying to do, honestly. I don't know where this card works. I don't know if this is the best form. But if you look at red spot removal for creatures, like beyond just burning them, there's not much else. So being able to get rid of any problem, potentially, is decent. And again, it's on their upkeep. So you play it, it's their next turn, it can get taken away from them right there. Where it's like if it's some effect they need to go ahead and attack for or whatever, if it's their commander, like still, it's not horrible. And again, this is an enchantment. We are seeing valid reasons for enchantments in red. So this is a card I think it will get better as time progresses. But as of right now, it's kind of meh. But I wanted to point it out to being like, hey, check out this card.
Well, hey, nothing wrong with that. But if we can go on to my number 7 now, we got some really good removal here, actually.
Oh, thanks, Kyle.
Well, my number 7 here is going to be Plaguebearer, and this is a 2-mana, 1 generic, 1 black, 1/1 zombie creature. And it has the ability double X and black, destroy target non-black creature with total converted mana cost equal to X. So when I saw this card, I was very surprised because I'm a big zombie tribal enthusiast. I think it's a very good tribe if you're going to play tribal commander. And I didn't know this card existed until now. And I'm really mad about it because this is a great card. Like, reusable, scalable ability to kill creatures on a creature with a great tribe. Sign me up, like, right now. I mean, yes, is that removal a little bit pricey? If you want to kill something that costs 4 mana, you're going to have to pay 9 to do it. Yes. And does it have restrictions? Non-black creature, once again, like we see all the time? Yes. But just the fact that it comes on a body makes it almost all worthwhile, in my opinion. And when you compare it to options like Stronghold Assassin, which can tap to kill creatures, this is pretty comparable in a lot of ways because you don't need haste for this to be good. It can just come out and do its thing.
Yeah, it doesn't have to tap to use it, so you can go ahead and use a whole bunch of mana and just blow up an opponent's field, which is great. I've actually seen this effect before, even if I haven't seen this card before, which I can't say I'm one-upping you slightly on this one, but like Deep Fire Elemental has the same effect, but it's in Boros, and it can also target an artifact. So
Rakdos, actually, right? Red-black, right?
Yeah, red-black.
Yeah, right.
Even when I win, I lose. So that one can also hit an artifact or a creature, which I'd say is a little bit stronger in this. However, this card does cost only 3 mana. So what would be the type of creatures that are out at this time? Well, ones that cost 1, 2, or 3. So to get rid of a 1-drop, it costs 3 mana. That's not horrible. And you're also being able to go ahead and take out a token army for 1 mana for each target. That's pretty good. And like you said, the whole big thing about this card, it's a zombie, great tribe, low-costed, black reanimates like crazy. So this is always a great card to just have in your arsenal to be like, all right, I need to bring this out. I need to take out this. Whatever this is, it can handle. As long as it doesn't have black, yeah. I'm with you on this card, Kyle. This is definitely a super budget option. And, I mean, with Cabal Coffers, Magus of the Coffers, like Crypt Gas, all these other cards out there that double mana like crazy for black. This is like, does that XX really hold it back? Not exactly. You just need to get the right pieces, and this will become a huge powerhouse on the board.
Yeah, I love it. And like I said, I did not know this existed until now. So I'm totally in. If I build future zombie decks, use this card for sure.
Agreed. So moving on to my last card for this video. Now, this is the one that I'm actually pretty excited about. It's called Medicine Bag, and this one does regenerate the right way, Kyle. I'm just going to say that first. It costs 3 mana for an artifact, and it has the ability to go ahead, you pay 1, you tap it. You choose and discard a card in your hand to regenerate target creature. So this is something that's not restrictive to time, more or less. Like that green instant that Kyle talked about earlier, that's a one-shot. You can use this one multiple times. And being able just to pay 1 mana, like we saw before, is great. Now, it's only a one-type shot. You got to tap it. You got to use it. You got to discard a card, but you save it. You regenerate. It's so strong. And being able to get this effect outside of green is really, really powerful. I know I'm not explaining it the best way, but I am thrilled about this card. Like, legit.
Well, it has a few advantages. It has a few advantages over Resuscitate from earlier that I talked about. A few disadvantages, too. I mean, advantages, it can be played in any deck because it is an artifact. Disadvantages, it requires an additional cost like discarding a card, which I would argue is more pricey than necessarily an additional mana. And also, it can only keep 1 creature alive at a time, barring some kind of untapping shenanigans and whatnot. However, I do think that this could be potentially useful in some kind of more solo Voltron creature-based strategy that just really, really needs to keep its creatures alive. Here's yet another way to do it.
And that's it also. Like, well, also, you can keep your commander alive. Like, there's also so many ways to return cards to the hand. If we're looking at mono red, we have something like Squee, which can go ahead and just return itself. So you're not losing anything. And there's also different decks that like to have stuff in the grave. There's Wheeling that likes to just put stuff in the grave. There's Madness effects and a whole bunch of other stuff that goes on to that caveat as well. So that might not be the worst case in this scenario. Also, it's an artifact, easily tutorable. It's a 3-drop artifact, gives it even more tutorability right there, and you can use the effect the turn it comes in. It's just a great safety mechanism to just leave it on the board and be like, all right, this is out. I have 1 mana. I have cards in hand. Waste a removal spell. I'm going to be fine.
And hey, discarding cards isn't always bad either, so keep that in mind too.
Yeah. So I just thought it was something interesting. I haven't seen it. I think you can definitely go in some decks. But Kyle, what do you have for number 6?
All right. Well, my number 6 is a little bit more large scale impact card. We have Pandemonium here. It is exactly that too. It's a 4 mana red enchantment. Costs 3 generic, 1 red. Whenever any creature comes into play, that creature's controller may choose to have it deal damage equal to its power to target creature or player, which these days is just any target. So this is a very interesting kind of card because it's the basically a prototype of an Impact Tremors Warstorm Surge type of card. Now, Warstorm Surge does this exact same thing, except it's limited to only your own creatures, and it costs 6 mana. And there's a reason for that, because that effect can be very powerful. So discounting it to 4 mana is even more powerful. However, giving the ability to all creatures coming into play is potentially kind of dangerous. However, I would note that the reason I brought this up and the reason I've seen it see a lot of play recently is because of the Enrage mechanic from Ixalan. The dinosaurs in that block love to have damage dealt to themselves, to have all kinds of beneficial effects come up. And especially, it goes infinite. One of many cards that does it, but it goes infinite with a card called Polyraptor, which was an enraged dino that made a copy of itself every time it got dealt damage. So that's just one way of using this card. I mean, obviously, there are many, many more. If you're swarming with creatures and have a red token-based strategy, this could potentially remove other people's boards faster than they can make them.
Yeah, I agree with you with that. And I was going to say, outside of the infinite combo, it still is good on its own. Like for certain commanders like Torbran, Neheb, Rakdos, I mean, even Kranko, it's great because instead of having to worry about certain spell slinging effects like a lightning bolt, you can just bring something into play and that'll take care of the problem. And also, you can go ahead and swing in. So we'll use Krenko for this example. Create 3 tokens. All right, take out their 1 blocker. Now swing in for 3 damage. It's almost like a repercussion. And then also, let's throw repercussion into the mix and make it even more bonkers. Like, this is something that really wants. It really goes super well with that flavor. I'm going to say damage doublers also makes this thing more insightful as well. It makes the board pretty much pandemonium. And this is a card that's, again, pretty cheap to get and can do big things. And yeah, I agree with you, Kyle. This is a solid card.
Well, thanks. I think that about wraps it up, though, for this video.
Yep, that's our final cards from both of us. That is part 1. So the next ones that we have coming up are the ones that we say are better. Yes. So if you're interested in those, we'll have at the end of the video a link going to that one, but you'll otherwise have to wait out for a whole week for that. And until then, you can find us on all sorts of our social media. Kyle, somewhere.
Yes, we're on Tapped Out, where we keep all of our deck lists. We're on Facebook and Twitter at the handle The Card Pool, as you can see down below. And we also have our Reddit presence and our official own subreddit now, which is very exciting.
So go ahead, join us, follow us there. You can hear all of our new updates coming out, any ideas that we're pondering, or if you have any questions about what we come up with, that also is viable. And you can also, if you're buying any of these cards or any cards in general from TCG Player, we have an affiliate link with them. If you click on it down in the description below before checking out, it helps the channel and lets TCG Player know that you like what we do, and they take note of it.
Well, awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. And until then,
I'm Kyle, and we'll see you next time
at the Card Pool. You slowed it down again, Kyle. We gotta line it up.
We'll get it eventually. We'll get it.